Okay, this is a very special episode from my bathtub. Hello. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but this is as much a message for myself as it probably is for any of you who are listening. Baby girl, you are doing a great job. Keep it up. I know you're out there trying your best, trying to show up as intentionally as you can in all areas of your life. And it's okay if there are still areas where you feel like you'd like to make shifts. Right now is a time of huge intensity. I hope in hearing me say that there's a space for compassion. Compassion for the emotions you're experiencing, the physical sensations, the challenges, the triumphs. There's so much happening in our collective right now, and there's so much happening within each of us. The guiding question that I'm playing with and have had, maybe moderate success with is, how can I choose love right now? Now, that sounds like a really noble question to ask. And sometimes when push comes to shove in a challenging situation, the question isn't available. What becomes available is our default state, our default tendencies, our default coping mechanisms, the things that we learned at a really young age to keep ourselves safe and protected. So if you find yourself in that place right now, know that you're not bad, there's nothing wrong. But because you're bringing awareness to your behaviors and your tendencies and how they leave you and other people feeling, is there anything in your life that you'd like to shift? And if so, does it sound supportive and useful to make a shift toward love? Because typically when we find ourselves out of alignment in our lives, we're acting from fear or lack or deficiency in some way. Perhaps we're acting from anger or some other emotion. And again, there's nothing inherently good or bad, right or wrong about those things. But as a conscientious being, you get to ask yourself, is this the place I want to be acting from? What I can say from my personal experience is that, especially in my relationship and in my work, I have found myself operating from fear. Fear of being hurt, fear of not making enough money, fear of being taken advantage of, fear of not knowing where the next client will come from. And that's been a mixed bag, along with operating from faith and love about knowing that I'm in the exact right relationship for me right now, and that my partner is both my partner and a great spiritual teacher, and that he has my best interests at heart. And in my business, knowing that true alignment and me taking great care of myself is what's going to create the next great idea, the next workshop, the next client. So there's a shift that we're making from fear to love. And as I sit with this question, I even reflect on my day. There were many times today where I chose to act from anger and fear in my relationship. And I'm starting to ask myself now, as I'm reflecting in this bath, recording this podcast episode, what does it look like to operate from love? What does that look like, especially in a moment where there are challenging feeling emotions? Does it look like pausing and taking a breath? Does it look like stepping away to understand what my needs are? Does it look like taking a breath so I can be empathetic to my partner's needs? A lot of times for me, it looks like deeper reflection, taking some space. I found that I've oftentimes forced myself to make decisions quickly or to have the answer and have everything figured out right on the spot, have the quote unquote perfect thing to say. And that's just not working well for me these days. I'm finding that I need space to reflect, space to feel. Because in my set of default responses, there's defensiveness, there's projection, there's anger. And those are the default responses that come up when I don't allow myself space and a breath and a few moments to say, okay, Lee, what do you want to do? How do you want to act? What feels most supportive for the health of this relationship, for your own health, for your partner's health? So I'm sitting in deep reflection and posing the question to you. What does acting from love look like in any given situation that feels challenging right now? What does it sound like? What kinds of things would you say if you were coming from a place of love? Would you say things like, hey babe, what do you need right now? How can I help? And this is, of course, in the context of romantic partnership, but this can be in any relationship. What do you need? How can I help? What's coming up for you right now? Can I support? So what does coming from love sound like? What does it feel like in your body? You know, when I think of coming from love, for me, it feels easy. It feels effortless. It feels the way something feels when a word rolls off the tongue. That's how coming from love feels. And sometimes I find that I have to fight myself because my default is sometimes to not come from love, to come from fear or anger. And I recognize the somatic experience that I have inside my body. So what does it feel like to come from love? Does your chest space feel more open? Do you take a deep breath? Do you feel lighter? Do you get tingles? What is that experience you have when you're coming from a place of ease and joy and love? What does it look like to come from love? Does it look like affection? Does it look like acts of service, genuine acts of service for someone? If somebody were watching you from a window and you were acting from love, what would that look like? The two other senses are, what would it taste like and what would it smell like? Now, this may or may not be relevant. Maybe it tastes and smells like a banana bread, which is awesome. But the invitation here is just to tap into your senses, to really get clear and visualize in your mind what it looks like and feels like and sounds like, as if you were watching a movie on a screen when you act from love. You might notice what it looks like and sounds like and feels like when you act from a place other than love, so you have contrast. Maybe you find that you don't want to act in those ways as often as you act from love, or as often as you attempt to act from love. This is simply an inquiry into what comes up when we act from love, when we show up with true empathy and compassion, when we show up with presence and the desire to actively listen versus listen to respond. I say this not having it all figured out, of course. I find myself in all of my tendencies, and I find myself with a deep desire to move in a different direction, just to move differently, to move through my life differently, to inhabit my body differently, to show up in relationship differently. So my invitation to you today is, what does it look like to act from love and to be love? It sounds like maybe an abstract question, but the cool thing is you can put any meaning onto this that feels good for you, that feels right and resonant for you in any given moment. Maybe in one moment acting and being love looks different than it does in another moment, or looks different than it does from one person to another. And as we all know, these are the times where we all need love the most. And if you're finding that you've been acting out or someone in your life has been acting out, it's easy to become angry or frustrated with ourselves or others. But if we look just beyond the anger and frustration, we might find compassion and a place where we recognize that when we're acting out, it's love and care and nurture and affection that we probably need the most. And when someone else is acting out, same is true for them. So from my heart to yours, I'm sending you a lot of love. And I'm wishing you so much love and good vibes from my bathtub.